They were the couple that stopped crowds cold, two towering figures who seemed torn from a myth, yet their story was painfully real. Anna and Martin Bates, giants in stature and spirit, stunned the world with their extraordinary size and shattered hearts with the tragedies that followed. Behind the applause and curiosity lay a love story so unbelievable, so haunting, that history still whispers their names. Anna Haining Swan, the girl who outgrew the world. In a quiet corner of Nova Scotia, on an ordinary summer day in 1846, a baby girl was born who would never fit into the world she inherited. Quite literally. Anna Haining Swan arrived with a weight that startled the midwives, and as the years passed, she grew not like a child but like a force of nature. By 4, she towered over other children. By 15, she was already brushing the 7-foot mark, a living question the world could not stop asking. Her parents, gentle Scottish immigrants, tried desperately to build a normal life around a daughter who was anything but ordinary. Her father crafted oversized desks and beds with his own hands, hoping wood and nails could somehow protect her from a society that treated her not as a child, but as a spectacle. Yet curiosity drifted faster than compassion. Neighbors, travelers, even journalists made their way to the Swan farm just to stare, some in wonder, others in fear, all of them certain they were witnessing something impossible. Anna felt the eyes long before she understood why they followed her. She longed to blend in, to sit at a desk without her knees pressed painfully against its frame, to walk down a street without whispers trailing behind her. But destiny had chosen her for a different stage. As her body stretched further into the realm of the extraordinary, so did the world's fascination. People began to call her the infant giantess, a name that burned and dazzled all at once. To the crowds, she was a marvel. To her family, she was simply Anna, and to herself, she was a girl trapped between two worlds, one too small for her body, the other too eager to claim her. But none of them knew it yet. Her incredible size was only the beginning. Her life would soon collide with fame, fire, royalty, and a love story both breathtaking and devastating. The world had not seen a giant like Anna, and it was nowhere near ready for what her story would become. The dream she couldn't fit into. As Anna grew into her towering frame, her heart clung stubbornly to one humble dream. She wanted to be a teacher, not a spectacle, not a curiosity, just a girl standing in front of a blackboard, shaping young minds the way books had shaped hers. It was the one place she believed she could finally belong, but the world had other plans. When Anna left home to study in a new city, she hoped she might finally outrun the stares. Instead, she walked straight into a harsher spotlight. Classrooms built for ordinary bodies felt like cages around her. Desks bit into her knees, door frames forced her to bow, and every hallway amplified the whispers that clung to her like vines. Children gawked. Adults didn't bother to hide their astonishment. Every step she took sounded like an announcement that she did not belong. The dream that had once glowed so warmly inside her began to flicker. She tried to ignore the stares. She tried to shrink into herself, though her body refused to cooperate. But the world kept pushing her outward, labeling her, defining her, deciding for her. And one day, after another walk through the streets filled with pointing fingers and open mouths, she understood something painful. The world was not ready for a teacher like Anna Swan. The decision broke her. Giving up teaching felt like letting go of the one thing that made her feel human in a world that treated her as anything but. And yet, in the quiet moments of defeat, the words of her grandmother echoed through her mind, "Stand tall, Anna, and be proud of your Highland blood." Anna lifted her chin. Maybe she couldn't be the kind of teacher she once imagined, but deep down, a new truth was beginning to take shape, one that would pull her onto a stage far bigger than any classroom. A truth that whispered she was meant for something larger, something only a woman of her extraordinary size could ever become. The giantess steps into the spotlight. When Anna boarded the ship to America in 1862, she carried nothing but a suitcase, a wounded dream, and a body the world refused to ignore. But across the ocean, fate had prepared a stage big enough for her, P.T. Barnum's museum, the beating heart of American spectacle. And there, for the first time, Anna wasn't a misfit. She was a star. Barnum introduced her as the Nova Scotian Giantess, a title that wrapped her difference in glitter instead of shame. Crowds streamed in daily, paying good money just to stand before her towering presence. But behind the velvet curtains, something unexpected happened. Anna found pieces of the life she had lost. They gave her tutors. They taught her music. She learned to play the piano, her long fingers floating over the keys like wings, and she discovered her voice could silence a room just as easily as her height could astonish one. For once, people weren't staring at her. They were listening. Her weekly pay in gold was more than her entire family could imagine back home. And unlike so many performers of the era, Anna owned the rights to her own likeness. Every photo sold, every portrait printed, she earned from it. She was no longer a curiosity being used. She was a woman finally writing her own story. But the brightest spotlights cast the darkest shadows. In July of 1865, flames exploded through Barnum's museum like a living beast. Screams echoed down the staircases as fire devoured everything it touched. For others, escape meant slipping through windows or racing down narrow hallways. But Anna could do neither. Her size, the marvel that had made her famous, now threatened to trap her in a burning tomb. Smoke filled her lungs, heat cracked the walls around her, and just when the crowd outside believed the giantess was lost, 18 men joined together, pushing, pulling, lifting her massive frame through a path barely wide enough for hope. She survived. But everything she owned turned to ash. What most never learned was this. Anna stayed behind not because she was slow or helpless, but because she was helping others escape before her. Even as the flames clawed closer, she refused to leave anyone behind. America had met a giantess, but in that fire they discovered something far greater. A heart as enormous as her towering form. The giantess who captivated a queen. After surviving the flames that nearly claimed her life, Anna emerged from the ashes not weakened, but transformed. The world had already seen her size. Now it would witness her spirit. She returned to the stage with a new kind of confidence, a calm grace that drew crowds not with shock, but with something deeper, curiosity mixed with admiration. And soon, America wasn't enough to contain her rising fame. Promoters invited her to Europe, where royalty, scholars, and the elite longed to see the woman who defied nature's blueprint. It was on these tours that Anna discovered something she had never felt before: acceptance. Not the hollow applause of gawkers, but the genuine wonder of people who saw her as more than a curiosity. And then came the invitation that changed everything. Queen Victoria wanted to meet her. When Anna entered Buckingham Palace, even the royal guards struggled to hide their astonishment. Draped in elegant fabrics, towering nearly 8 feet tall, she moved with a softness that contradicted her massive frame. And when the queen saw her, she didn't recoil. She smiled, warmly, respectfully, almost tenderly. Victoria had lost her beloved Prince Albert just 2 years earlier, and grief had swallowed much of her former joy. But Anna's presence, so extraordinary yet so gentle, seemed to spark something in the queen. Curiosity, admiration, perhaps even comfort. The two talked for hours, not about freak shows or fame, but about music, books, faith, and the strange burden of being placed on a pedestal you never asked for. Against all odds, the queen and the giantess became unlikely friends. Victoria invited her back again and again. Each visit brought new gifts, delicate jewelry, embroidered linens, tokens of affection that showed the queen didn't see Anna as a spectacle, but as a woman worthy of dignity and friendship. For Anna, who had spent so much of her life being stared at like a public oddity, this acceptance felt like a kind of healing she never dared hope for. As her fame spread across Europe, posters began placing her name above even the legendary Chang and Eng, the original Siamese twins who dominated the entertainment world. Anna Swan, the giantess of Nova Scotia, had become a phenomenon. Crowds followed her from London to Paris, from Berlin to Vienna. Everywhere she went, theaters overflowed. But the real surprise was what happened when the lights went down and the curtains closed. Instead of longing for rest, Anna began longing for something else, something simple, something human. Amid the tours and the fame and the royal attention, a quiet ache grew inside her, a yearning for companionship, for someone who could stand beside her not in awe, but in understanding. She had no idea that her wish was already making its way toward her in the form of another towering silhouette who would one day capture her heart and share her burdens. Her path was about to collide with destiny, and together they would become a legend the world still speaks of today. When one giant met another. For years, Anna had walked through crowds feeling like a universe of one, seen by everyone, understood by no one. But fate has a strange way of answering the desires we whisper only to ourselves. And in 1870, that answer arrived in the form of a man who, quite literally, met her at eye level. It happened in Halifax, almost by accident. Anna, now a seasoned performer, wandered backstage at a traveling circus, curious to see what new acts filled the tents that season. And then she saw him. Martin Van Buren Bates, a mountain of a man, towering over 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered, calm-eyed, an impossible mirror of her own extraordinary existence. For a moment, the world seemed to shrink around them, two giants in a room built for ordinary people. Martin noticed her at the exact same second. His expression, instead of shock, softened into something she rarely saw in strangers: recognition. Not the kind that said, "You are different," but the kind that whispered, "So am I." Their first conversation felt like breathing clean air after years underwater. They spoke not about their size, everyone else did that for them, but about books, music, the loneliness of fame, and the strange life of living inside a body that drew crowds everywhere except where it mattered most. A promoter, sensing opportunity, attempted to pair them as a spectacle, the world's tallest man and woman, together. But what blossomed between them wasn't business. It was belonging. Martin was gentle, thoughtful, a former soldier with a poet's soul. He treated Anna not like a marvel, but like a woman, one with dreams, fears, laughter, and scars. And for the first time, Anna didn't feel oversized. She felt seen. When Martin asked her to marry him, it wasn't with fanfare or theatrics, but with a quiet sincerity that made her heart feel impossibly too big for her chest. And so, in 1871, the two giants stepped into St. Martin in the Fields in London, a church built for ordinary lovers, and transformed it into a cathedral of legend. Guests gasped as the couple stood together, nearly 16 feet of combined height, draped in satin and hope. Even Queen Victoria herself sent a gown and jewels, as if blessing a fairy tale she believed the world needed. But behind the celebration, behind the astonishment and applause, a deeper truth pulsed beneath the surface. They were no longer alone. They were no longer anomalies. They had finally found home in each other. What the world saw as extraordinary was, for them, simply love. A love so powerful it would take them to unimaginable heights and lead them into heartbreaks no ordinary human could ever grasp. The first child who never took a breath. For a brief, shining moment, Anna and Martin Bates believed fate had finally decided to be kind to them. They had traveled the world, faced every stare, survived fire and cruelty, and now, At last, they were building a life rooted in something tender. Their home in Seville, Ohio, stood like a quiet monument to their love, ceilings that soared, doorways widened for their frames, and rooms shaped by the dreams of two people who had never truly fit anywhere. And then came the news that filled that enormous house with an even bigger hope. Anna was pregnant. To outsiders, the idea of a giantess carrying a child was a spectacle waiting to happen. But to Anna, it was sacred. She imagined tiny fingers curling around hers, a heartbeat that matched her own, laughter echoing through halls built to hold far more than sorrow. She and Martin whispered about names, sewed baby clothes larger than ordinary, and prayed that life would be kinder to their child than it had been to them. But destiny, it seemed, had not finished testing them. On May 19th, 1872, after hours of agonizing labor, an eerie silence filled the room. The midwives exchanged looks, heavy, wordless, devastating. The baby girl who arrived weighed 18 pounds, a weight no newborn's fragile body could bear. She was gone before Anna even had the chance to hold her against her chest. What happened next would haunt the Bates home for years. Martin stood frozen, a giant undone by grief, staring at the child who should have carried their legacy. And Anna, who had survived a lifetime of being treated as a curiosity, crumbled under a grief no audience could ever witness or exploit. Her cry was not the cry of a giantess, but of a mother shattered in the most human way imaginable. The crib they had built stayed empty. The baby clothes remained folded. The hope that once filled their oversized rooms seeped out through the cracks of their broken hearts. Anna withdrew into herself, her spirit dimmed. Not even Martin, her partner, her equal, the only man who had ever matched her step for step, could reach her completely. Their great house suddenly felt too big, too quiet, too hollow to bear. But the world knew nothing of this pain. To the public, Anna was still the towering wonder, the marvel who toured stages and captivated royalty. But in the privacy of that Ohio home, a truth far heavier than her height settled onto her shoulders. Even giants can break. And though neither of them knew it yet, this tragedy was only the beginning. The largest baby the world had ever seen. 6 long years passed before Anna dared to hope again. 6 years of carrying the ghost of a child she never held. But when she learned she was pregnant once more, the fragile spark inside her flickered back to life. She moved carefully, breathed carefully, prayed carefully, as if fear itself might shatter the miracle growing inside her. But on January 18th, 1879, the miracle became a storm. Her water broke with such force that witnesses claimed she lost 6 gallons of fluid. The midwives stared in disbelief. The doctor paled. Something monstrous, something extraordinary was trying to enter the world. Hours dragged into agony. Anna, nearly 8 feet tall and heavy with exhaustion, fought through waves of pain that threatened to crush her. When the baby crowned, the doctor froze. His forceps, built for ordinary infants, couldn't even fit around its head. There was only one way to deliver the child. They wrapped a bandage around its neck and pulled with every ounce of strength they had. The baby emerged, a giant born of giants, 23 pounds, 30 inches long, the size of a 6-month-old at birth. No newborn before or since has ever matched that sheer scale. It was a birth that shattered medical logic and would later carve the child's name, sadly, posthumously, into the Guinness World Records. Martin stood speechless, trembling, staring at the son who looked both miraculous and impossible. For a fleeting moment, hope flooded the room, raw and blinding. Anna, drenched in sweat and tears, reached out with shaking hands. But destiny had never promised mercy. Within 11 hours, the infant's breathing slowed. His heart, enormous but fragile, faltered under the weight of his impossible size. And just like that, before the sun even rose, their second child followed the first into silence. Anna collapsed into a grief deeper than any pit she had known. This wasn't just loss, it was punishment, a cruelty so sharp it hollowed her from the inside out. The world later celebrated the record, the largest baby ever born. But the world never felt what Anna did, the crushing emptiness of holding a child who shouldn't have died, the unbearable knowledge that even her love couldn't save him. After the funeral, the Bates home, built for giants, felt like a mausoleum, too tall, too wide, too full of echoes of lives that never got to grow. And as winter settled over Ohio, so did a terrible truth. Some hearts, no matter how enormous, can only break so many times. The giantess who slowly faded from the spotlight. After losing her second child, the largest newborn the world had ever seen, Anna Bates was never the same. The woman who once commanded stages and captivated royalty now moved like a shadow of her former self. Fame no longer tempted her. Crowds no longer amazed her. The spotlight that had lifted her for so many years suddenly felt blinding, cruel, unbearable. She withdrew from touring, turning down offers that once would have thrilled her. Promoters begged, audiences waited, newspapers speculated, but Anna had vanished behind the quiet walls of her Ohio home, seeking refuge from a world that had taken too much. Yet even in retreat, life had a way of finding her. As the seasons turned, Anna and Martin found a new rhythm, slower, gentler, stitched together with quiet routines on their farm. And in that stillness, Anna discovered a different kind of purpose. Their local Baptist church welcomed her not as a spectacle, but as a soul in need of healing. The congregation built special seats just for her and Martin, not out of curiosity but compassion. For the first time in years, Anna felt seen, truly seen. And in that sanctuary, surrounded by hymns and hope, she stepped into a role she had once believed life had stolen from her. She became a teacher. Not in a schoolroom, not in front of blackboards, but in Sunday school, guiding children with the tenderness of a woman who understood suffering far too well. They adored her. To them, she wasn't the giantess, but the kind lady with the warm voice and enormous heart. But life, even when gentle, does not last forever. Tuberculosis crept into her lungs. Thyroid troubles drained her strength. Her towering body, once the wonder of continents, grew tired. Still, she pushed on, teaching, reading, praying, loving, until one quiet night in 1888, the giantess finally laid down her burdens. She slipped away in her sleep just hours before her 42nd birthday, a peaceful exit after a lifetime spent fighting to simply exist. Martin, shattered but loyal, erected a monument over her grave tall enough to match the memory of the woman he loved. And when his own time came, he returned to her side in death, buried beside Anna and the son they never got to raise. Today, their story lives on in Ohio, in Nova Scotia, in museums and family tales. A reminder that behind the towering heights and freak show posters was a woman who loved deeply, suffered silently, and lived a life far larger than any stage could hold. The legend who never stopped growing. Long after Anna Bates took her final breath, her story refused to shrink into the quiet corners of history. It kept stretching, across towns, across decades, across generations, much like the woman herself. The world had lost its giantess, but the memory of her refused to lie down. In Seville, Ohio, where her towering footsteps once echoed across farm fields, people still speak her name with a kind of reverence. A small town museum preserves pieces of her life, photographs that once mesmerized Victorian crowds, shoes the size of sleds, dresses sewn with enough fabric to clothe a family. Visitors stand before these relics stunned, trying to imagine the woman who once filled them. And Halifax, her birthplace, built a museum of its own, an entire space dedicated to the girl who outgrew her world. Some of her relatives' descendants still guide the tours, telling stories passed down like sacred heirlooms. They speak of her kindness, her quiet humor, her resilience, the parts of Anna newspapers never bothered to print. But the world hasn't forgotten her height either. More than 150 years later, Anna and Martin Bates still hold the Guinness World Record as the tallest married couple in history, a title untouched by time, towering above every couple who came after. And their son, the baby who lived only hours, remains the largest newborn ever recorded in medical history. 2 records, both breathtaking and heartbreaking. Posters from her performing days, preserved in the British Library, reveal another truth. Promoters exaggerated her height endlessly, pushing her past 8 feet in bold black letters. She was advertised above even Chang and Eng, the famed Siamese twins who once ruled London stages. Anna wasn't just part of the show. She was the headliner, the marvel, the phenomenon people crossed countries to witness. And yet behind the spectacle was a woman who longed for nothing more than to live a life as big in meaning as it was in size. And she did. Her story is not just about gigantism, not just about tragedy, not even about fame. It is about a woman who stood taller than the world expected in courage, in gentleness, in love. A woman who survived being displayed, misunderstood, envied, feared, and still chose kindness. A woman whose life proved that even when the world feels too small for you, your heart can carve out a place large enough to belong. Today, Anna and Martin rest side by side beneath Ohio soil, giants no longer in body, but in memory. And as long as people continue to whisper their names, their story will keep growing, reaching, towering, just like they once did. Records written in Giants ink. Long before Guinness began stamping human extremes into its legendary book, Anna and Martin Bates had already carved their names into the boundaries of possibility. And even now, more than 150 years later, the world still cannot look away from the records they left behind. The first is their love story. Not the romance itself, but the scale of it. Anna and Martin Bates remain the tallest married couple in documented history. Standing together at a combined height of 477 centimeters, they towered over every couple before them and every couple since. No modern pair has even come close. Their love wasn't just rare, it was mathematically extraordinary, but their second record is far darker. On a frigid January night in 1879, Anna delivered the child who would secure their place in Guinness history, a baby boy who weighed 23 pounds and measured 30 inches at birth. A newborn the size of a toddler. A medical impossibility. A tragedy wrapped inside a world record. Doctors had never seen anything like him. Newspapers called him the largest infant ever born, and Guinness later confirmed it. But behind the cold statistics was a truth far heavier than numbers could capture. The child lived only 11 hours. It was the kind of record no parent would ever want, yet the world clung to it, fascinated, horrified, unable to look away. By contrast, the couple's own record, tallest married pair, carried a different kind of awe. It wasn't tragic, it was triumphant. A reminder that 2 people who had spent their entire lives being stared at for the wrong reasons could for once be celebrated for something beautiful. 2 records, one born of love, one born of heartbreak, both immortal. And together they formed the strange, astonishing legacy of the Bates family, a family that proved the human story is sometimes written in measurements so extreme, the world has no choice but to remember them. The legacy that refused to lay down. In the century since Anna and Martin Bates walked the earth, the world has grown, changed, transformed. But their story has only stood taller. Their lives were not fairy tales wrapped in satin and applause. They were battles fought in bodies too large for comfort, too extraordinary for anonymity, too misunderstood for peace. Yet somehow, the 2 of them carved out something far more powerful than fame. They carved out meaning. Anna, the girl who outgrew desks, dreams, and entire expectations of her era, became a symbol of resilience long before the world knew how to define it. Martin, the gentle giant who matched her step for step, proved that love is not intimidated by size, tragedy, or the weight of the extraordinary. Their story has been retold in museums, in books, in posters hidden in archives across oceans. People still stand before their artifacts in disbelief, trying to imagine a world in which two giants walked among ordinary men and left behind footprints that history could never wash away. But what makes their legacy endure isn't just the numbers, not the height, not the records, not the spectacle. It is the humanity behind it. A father who buried two children he barely had time to know. A mother who found the heart to teach again after losing everything. A couple who, despite being treated as curiosities, built a home large enough to hold both hope and heartbreak. They lived enormous lives, yes, but they also lived deeply human ones. And maybe that is why we still remember them, because Anna and Martin Bates remind us that every life, no matter how unusual, carries a story worth telling. A story that rises above tragedy. A story that stands taller than the world expects. In the end, the giantess and her giant did not fade into history. They rested, but their legend never stopped growing, and it never will.